Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put the sensors back in. We're going to put the one that goes all the way at the bottom and the one right above it. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and secure this. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put this little shaft in before the big one. Alright, so you're going to use a T25 socket to secure these bolts in. Just make sure you tighten, like, don't over tighten one. Just try to tighten all of them equally. So now we're going to go ahead and put this in. The best way to do this is you just twist it with the spirals. You'll see once I start putting it in. Make sure you put a new seal on here. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and hook up all the connectors. So this one right here, right where the harness is, goes to this. Just like that. Then the ones in the back, they should already be where it needs to go. The connector should be right next to it. And it just clips in. And this one goes right here. That one's clipped in, and then the one on the bottom. And that one's good. Now we're going to go ahead and put the coils back. And once the coils are back, we'll go ahead and hook these ground cables back where they need to go. You'll hear a little click once they're secured in there. Alright, now we can go ahead and reattach this harness to the little clips down there. There we go. Now you can hook the connectors back up. Alright, now we just gotta hook up these ground cables. And you can go ahead and put the AC line right back where it needs to go on top of these two bolts. Just like that. We're going to put these small T25s for the ground cables. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and re-secure this harness. It's just holding with this little metal bar with these two bolts right here. And these bolts are T30s. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put these little retainers on for the ignition coils. It tells you how it's supposed to be oriented, so it says front. So just put them on accordingly, one on this side and one right here. And again, these are the E6, or you can use a 3/16 socket. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put the power steering reservoir and the expansion tank back at its location. Power steering reservoir just goes right here. There's a little divot kind of thing right here underneath it. There's a little rubber grommet that needs to slide into. Next, we're going to put the expansion tank back. Make sure you don't forget to put the connector for the level sensor, which is right at the bottom here. Alright, so just going to tighten the expansion tank bolts. They're T25s, and the power steering reservoir is going to be 10mm nuts. And also the AC holder, that's also going to be 10mm nuts. Alright, so now we're going to put the DME cover back on. It's held in with the hex bolts. Make sure you line it up properly. There's these little grooves on this side. They have to slide in first, and then you can lower it and put a bolt in. So here are the grooves on here as well. Alright, so here's how you can do it a little easier. So just start it out from over here, all the way on the right, slide it in, and then scoot it over. As you can see, there's an unlock and a lock on the actual cover itself that is drawn. That's why you start it out in the unlock position, line it up with this, and then you slide it over once it's already in the grooves. And then you can tighten up all 5 bolts. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put this fuel rail back in. Make sure that all your injectors have the O-ring, the gray O-ring right here. Make sure all the injectors have it, and make sure while you're lowering it into the actual intake that they do not slip off, because then you're going to have leaks everywhere and it's just not gonna run properly. Alright, O-ring, O-ring, O-ring. Alright, so now just secure this down. Make sure you push it down tight, that way it's secured. They are gonna wiggle a little bit, but they'll stop wiggling once you put the T30 bolts that go right here. So here's the 2 bolts that go there. Alright, so now you're gonna put these connectors back in. One right here, and this one right here. But first, before I put this connector in, I'm gonna go ahead and bolt in the 2 sensors that go right here. Once again, make sure you have the O-ring on that sensor before you put it in. There are 2 sensors, they're the same. They're held in with the E6 socket. Also, you use a 3/16. And this connector goes right here, and then you have the other 2 connectors. Alright, so once you have the sensor in, just make sure you push it in past that O-ring, so you'll watch that O-ring disappear when I push it. See, it clicks in just like that. Make sure you do that for both. You could probably, when you start tightening the bolt, it might go ahead and do it automatically, but you run the risk of cracking the sensor. So just try to push it in with your hands first. There you go, you heard the click. Now you can just twist it around, make sure the hole's showing, and then just go ahead and start tightening the bolt. Now we're gonna go ahead and put this gasket on to this sensor right here. And just line it up with the holes. As you can see, this clip actually on the sensor is broken. I discussed this with the owner of the car, and he does not want to get replaced, so we're just gonna leave it as is. And these again are the E6. You can also use a 3/16 socket. Alright, so now we're gonna hook up these connectors. This one goes right here. Another one goes on the bottom. Yeah. Alright, the connectors are done. Now we're gonna put the coils in. Line it up with the grooves that are on the valve cover, like you can see these grooves right here. Line it up with these 2 grooves on each coil, and then push it in. And you will hear a click once you push it in. Just like that. Now we're gonna go ahead and put the shaft in. So first you're gonna need this gasket. As I mentioned before, the gasket should come with the kit. It just goes right here. Make sure you take that old one out. The only tough part is gonna be putting this on with the gasket, because since the gasket's so wide, since it's new, it's gonna be hard to fit it in there. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna put it on here first, and then we're just gonna bolt it in slowly and make sure the gasket goes right into the grooves. Alright, so now you're gonna line up the bolts first, and just hand tighten them in first. Alright, and then the goal is you wanna get this side in first, the side closest to the intake, and just make sure that that gasket's going in properly. Then on this side, you're gonna see the gasket start bulging out. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna use like a little plastic thing or some kind of object that won't mess up the gasket, and just push it in. That way it'll just slide in properly. Just keep your finger in the back, just make sure that the gasket's not bulging. Alright, so now you're gonna put this O-ring right in that groove. When you're putting this in, just make sure you hook up that connector before you start tightening it down. That way you have the right orientation. Alright, so now you're gonna go ahead and put those hex bolts in. Alright, so now we're gonna go ahead and put these vents for the blower motors. This is what lets the air go into the cabin. So we're gonna put this on first. As you can see, there's little indents right here. This is where the bolts go through, and that goes right on top of here. Slide it in from back there. Make sure that this clip is in the unlock position as well. Make sure you watch all the wires and hose, the hose clamps in the back. Alright, now that's in. Now we're going to go ahead and put the bolts on, as well as the hose clamps. Alright, so right there's a hose clamp that holds this heater hose in, and we're just going to screw that into here, and same with on the other side. Alright, so there's the hex bolt that goes on the hose clamp. There's one on both sides. There's a T30 bolt that goes right in the center. And these two are where the strut bar goes. So use the T30 socket and go ahead and tighten this one up. Alright, so now we're gonna go ahead and put these 10mm bolts back in. There's a total of 4. 2 go on this side, 1 up here, 1 down there, and the same thing on the other side. Alright, now we're gonna go ahead and re-secure this coil pack harness. Just like the other side, it just secures into those little grooves. Alright, that's in. Now we're gonna put the connectors back in. And then now we just have to re-secure these ground cables. Alright, so now we're gonna use these small T25 screws. Alright, now we're gonna go ahead and put on this little plastic bracket that holds this the terminal, and that just goes right there. And then there's a little plastic nut on it. It's a 10mm nut. Just secure that on there. And then this can go right into the slides from underneath, just like that. Alright, now you're going to use a 13mm socket to tighten the bolts down. And then you can go ahead and close the caps. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put the coil retainers on both of the front and the back. Like I said previously, it tells you what the front is, and these are E6 sockets or E6 bolts. You could use a 3/16. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and secure the harness. These are 2 T30 bolts, and it's a small little plate first. Now you're going to put this one on, and you use these T30 bolts. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go and hook up the fuel line with this little fitting. So go ahead and take off this plastic cap first. Slide this on. You'll hear the click. And go ahead and put this little plastic cap back on. Now we're going to go ahead and hook up the rest of the connectors. So this connector goes to the auxiliary water pump, which is right here. Just click that in. Next we have the connector for the purge valve. And this one just plugs in right here. Now we can go ahead and buckle all these back in. This one's for the mass airflow sensor. All that is good. Now what you're going to do, just make sure all these hoses for the water pump and all that, and the heater hoses and all that, just make sure that they're all not touching anywhere, and that way it doesn't get melted by anything. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and hook up this hose. This just pushes and you'll hear a click. There we go. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and put the strut bar back on. These are the bolts. Alright, so these are T45s, by the way. So now we're gonna tighten the middle ones first. Alright, so now we're gonna go ahead and put the cabin filter cover back on. So make sure there's a hole right here, and then there's a little flap right here. So you need to slide that in first. Once that's in, then you should be able to just set it down. And this cover goes right on top. Just like that. Now let's do the other side. Alright, now you're going to use a 13mm socket and lock these plastic tabs back in. Alright, so there's 3 plastic tabs right here. 1, 2, and 3, and then that one in the middle that you have to secure on both sides. Alright, now you're going to secure these 2 T25s on both sides. They go right here. Alright, Alright, so now we're gonna actually put the filter assembly back in. See, what you want to do is, you see all these tabs on this side? You want to get them to go into the holes. So, just like that. Then once you get it down here, this little metal bar, just get it to clip up on top of these. Now you're going to put this rubber piece on. Alright, so make sure you have your connectors going through the bottom, and then you can just go ahead and hook the connectors up. Alright, so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and lock these plastic retainers. Now we're going to put the air box back on. Make sure there's a rubber grommet that goes down here. Then we're going to put this on first. This goes right here. Onto. Just like that. You're going to use this bolt right here, which is a T30. Now once you have that on, you're going to have to slide. You see there's a groove right here? You're going to have to slide that onto the part that we just put in. And you got to make sure that this little hole gets onto the grommet. Alright, so make sure that on this hole right here particularly, make sure the connectors get pinched underneath. And there we go. And now you could go ahead and put the other two T30 bolts in. One right here and one up here. Alright, now we're going to put the upper part of the airbox in. On these, make sure all these little metal clips are all the way pointing to the top. And once you have that, what you're going to do, you're going to slide it into here first. There we go. Now just make sure that the box is sitting properly. Metal clip has to go on the little ridge that's underneath. And you see how it clips up? And just pull it up. Now once you have that, you're going to go ahead and hook up the mass airflow sensor. Just clips in, and then we're going to put the cover on. Now last thing, we just got to tighten this hose clamp. Now that's tight. Now we're going to put the engine covers back on. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and put the last cover back on. These nuts back on, they're 10 millimeters. Alright, so you're going to also have to go ahead and put this little plastic piece in. This will keep these together. So just use this, slide it just slides in, just like that. So that's it for today, guys. We replaced the valve cover gaskets on this 2006 550i. This process, you could use it on the 750, 650, even the other V8s. Pretty much the process is similar. Thank you guys for watching. Like the video if you like it. If you have any questions or comments, leave a comment down below, and subscribe if you like my videos. Thanks.